one's understanding. Perhaps it is less important to ask if the AI was intelligent or not than to ask how did the AI operate. After all, labels are useful only when they further pursuit of the truth. And that, as you well know, is the goal of all science.
Sure, Doc. Thanks. I guess. Doc, that wolf UG, you think it's possible to repair it?
Why do you ask?
Just curious.
Well, normal brain tissue degrades starting approximately 3 minutes after the heart stops. With neural AI, however, the spin of the internal electrons is retained even after electric power is cut. Assuming there is no damage to the actual AI hardware itself, yes, repairs should be possible.
Okay.
Whatever state it is in, I would certainly appreciate it if you could bring it back with you.
I'll see what I can do, but the mission takes priority.
Of course. I would never suggest otherwise.
But let's just say this thing is what it claimed to be. You think there are other intelligent UGs out there? Because if that's the case, I've got a feeling future missions are only gonna get rougher.
Indeed. Dozens of UGs chatting away on the field would be enough to drive anyone to distraction. Neural AIs are not von Neumann computers, keep in mind. Structurally, they are closer to human brains. Hardware and software are indivisible. The learning data can't simply be transplanted to other AIs.
So it can't be copied or backed up either.
Normal UGs must be taught individually. This entails streaming provisional, audiovisual, and body sensor data until it's ready to be shipped out. This process can be sped up by increasing and improving processing speed. But I've no data on how long it would take to train such an AI how to converse. I couldn't even tell you if there's a training program established for such a thing in the first place. If it is indeed a prototype, it likely learned and honed its skills via the process of trial and error.
So it's unique.
I cannot say with certainty, but I have not heard of any UG like this before. I would imagine that it was telling the truth when it called itself an experimental prototype. There may be others. Or perhaps it's the only one in existence.
Glad we narrowed that down, then.
My apologies, Raiden. I realize we never concluded our discussion on carbon nanotube muscle fibers.
Didn't we?
CNT drove major innovations in the field of cybernetics, not to mention unmanned gears. As I'm sure you are aware, Walker-type UGs require numerous linear actuators in order to function. Previously, organic polymers or cultivated muscle cells were used to that purpose. But the advancement of CNT technology allowed for comparable power in a far more compact package. This meant the same size UGs could be equipped with even greater firepower. Take the redesigned Metal Gear Ray, for example.
They took all the space the old artificial muscles filled up and stuffed it with weapons.
Precisely. Of course, UGs have improved in many ways, all to keep pace with cyborg advancements, you know. After all, the original Metal Gear program was designed to unite infantry and weaponry. As an evolution of this concept, the UG is now in direct competition with the cyborg. And the cyborgs already have an advantage with their maneuverability and smaller size, as you well know. Of course, UGs are not dependent on the skills of a human host.
Long story short, watch out for UGs.
Well, yes, basically. Cyborgs have matched unmanned gears in many respects, but then UG tech advances every day. Do not underestimate any you might run into.
Copy that. Doc, all the UG talk got me thinking. Why don't we see more manned gears?
Ah, yes, with a pilot. The bipedal tanks and such things, I must confess I have not followed the field closely as of late. But then, who has? Since Metal Gear Ray, all the advances and the funding in mobile artillery has been UGs.
So why is that?
Well, UGs take many more forms. Aerial drones, treaded tanks, armored transports. And they are perfect for the 3D work. Jobs too dull, too dirty, or too dangerous for men. True Metal Gears with a pilot and nuclear payload were huge and very expensive. They were not practical. It turned out the greater need was for smaller, cheaper units, deployed more easily and in greater numbers. So the field narrowed in on this aspect of gear design, an all-terrain link between infantry and artillery. But even then, the UG models were more popular. In most cases, they simply made more sense.
But aren't there situations where you'd want gear-level power, but also a human pilot there to make decisions? UG-AI has gotten better, but it's still terrible at handling anything unexpected.
But Raiden, this is exactly the role the cyborg has taken. On the manned gear, any advantage of a cyborg in offensive power comes with a matching increase in size. This makes it so large as to no longer be practical for most infantry missions. Conversely, the smaller models are so close to cyborgs that, well, what is the point?
Cyborgs are smaller, cheaper, more nimble.
Precisely. Perhaps soon we will see the cyborg take the place of the UG, as the UG has done to the manned gear.
What, with wings? Scooting around on wheels?
Why do you laugh? It is the logical next step to have a human brain integrated into a tank or a plane.
Now you're getting into some B-grade sci-fi territory, Doc.
Oh, but it is all quite possible, I assure you. Just consider the possibilities. A humanoid frame for everyday life, yes, but the brainstem can be easily extracted and inserted into whatever chassis best suits the mission. So, yes, I suppose the paradigm could be flipped on its head. As UGs become smaller and smarter, they could begin to fill the cyborg's role. They will come to resemble them more and more in form and function, no doubt. I suppose at some point they would no longer be UGs, but androids. Glorious!
One thing about fighting these cyborgs, Doctor, it's strange in a way.
Oh? How do you mean?
I can slice them to pieces, and with all their pain and emotion suppressed, they don't feel a thing. At least against SOP troops. You never forgot they were real people. But these cyborgs, it starts to feel like I'm taking on unmanned gears, robots, not living, breathing men.
Intriguing. Tell me, does it help assuage the natural feelings of guilt? There is no reason to avoid this topic. Man has wrestled with it as long as there has been war. Guns were a huge step, of course, as it became easier to take a life, physically and mentally. Then, destroying a tank or airplane, where you no longer had to see your enemy's face as he perished. Eventually, remote-controlled drones further distanced the killer from his victim, much like the video games. I suppose cyborg soldiers could be seen as yet another step in dehumanizing death.
Maybe. I do feel like I could forget I'm taking the lives of real people here.
Well, under normal circumstances, you wouldn't necessarily be taking their lives, strictly speaking. So, as long as the brain is supplied with oxygen, a cyborg can survive most anything. Even if respiration is disabled, an emergency supply of liquid oxygen would remain in the bloodstream. The cyborg would enter a state of hibernation, yes. But so long as the brainstem were retrieved intact, it could be attached to another body and revived.
That's how the two Gemini survived.
The Gemini? Ah, yes, the twin cyborgs from the motorcade.
But Desperado's cyborgs are different.
Physical self-destruction is a fail-safe security measure. In any case, it is unfortunate that Prime Minister Nmane was human. Perhaps if he had been a cyborg, he might have survived as well.
We'll never know. Besides, a robotic Prime Minister? I doubt anyone would accept that. Inside or outside the country.
Yes, I suppose fear always does trump logic when it comes to the general public.
Exactly.
Raiden, something I meant to ask in our last chat. Did you consider opting for emotion restraints? I can understand one might be leery of the procedure, but it is all perfectly reversible, I assure you. You could implement them for a mission and then do away with them as soon as it was over.
I'll pass, thanks. To be honest, I have a problem with the whole concept.
And what is that?
Decisions are about more than just logic. Lose your emotions, and you risk not being able to relate to how normal people see right and wrong. Your conscience could end up different, warped, or who knows, maybe gone altogether. Boris agrees. That's why no Maverick cyborgs are allowed to use emotion restraints.
An understandable perspective. There is some data to support your belief. MRI scans have isolated the brain activity associated with choosing between good and bad. Mostly in the dorsolateral prefrontal and central orbitofrontal cortexes, to be precise. But this entire area of the brain is known to process emotion, not logical thought. It would seem to support the idea that emotion indeed plays a role in values-based decisions.
Well, there you go.
But another argument can be made, that it is emotion that sparks human conflict in the first place. All the great wars, all the great atrocities, would they have happened if not for emotional decisions?
Maybe not. But we can't just ignore the worldview of most of the planet. We don't exist in a vacuum here. To most of the world, a PMC operating on its own guidelines would be like a terrorist organization. They'd say we used brute force to impose our strange values on others. And they'd be right.
Yes, well, you have a point.
Abuse of emotion restraints has become a hot topic. Suppressing fear tends to boost aggression, which has led to cases of excessive violence.
True, achieving the right balance is difficult.
But on the other hand, it makes it possible to intentionally make people more aggressive. Even a child can become a bomb just waiting to explode.
Yes, it is very likely that Desperado is employing just such a technique.
Doc, that wolf UG. You think it's possible?
Why?
Just
Well, assume, but of course,
but cause
in your heart,
so it,
no, this I could, if it,
so it,
I would then.
glad.
What's up? No? Did you?
No, just
Raiden. Raiden, by use.